Hi everyone and welcome to this week's video. This week we are going to be talking about what seeds to sow now. It's the 1st of June and I am going to start sowing my biennial seeds today. Biennial seeds are seeds that you will grow in June-July time, and they will put down roots and they will put on some nice leafy growth. You'll plant them out before the end of the summer where you would like them to flower next year, and then come next late spring, early summer, you'll get lots of lovely biennial flowers blooming. So it's kind of like a 2-year cycle. You start them one year and they flower the next year. Also today I am going to be continuing my succession sowing, so if you watched my video a few weeks ago about succession sowing, you'll find that I am continuously sowing new batches of seeds so that I will get flowers at the tail end of the growing season now. So that's towards August, September time. I'm wanting flowers by putting the seeds on now. It's starting to slow down a little bit. The main batches are done, but things that will flower quickly from sowing the seeds to getting them to flower I will still be doing now. So that's things like sunflowers for me and phacelia. So those are the two that I'm going to be putting on today. These are some of my biennial seeds that I've got here. I've bought these from Higgeldy Garden. He does a really nice biennial seed bundle. So if you're looking to just buy a few different ones all together to get you started this June, this is a really nice mixture that you can buy. And there's biennial seeds that you can buy from all sorts of other retailers as well. Chiltern seeds I've bought from before, Plants of Distinction, they all do nice seeds too. So the main thing is knowing what are your biennial seeds. So what have I got here today? I have got some Honesty. Now Honesty is a fantastic flower. It's one of my first flowers to come out each year, which is really helpful. It goes with the tulips and the narcissi, and it's very, very pretty, and I grow it in a nice white colour. So that's a good one to grow. And also it has these amazing seed pods. So after it's finished flowering, keep it in the garden, don't cut it down, and it will create these lovely seed pods for you that you can use in flower arranging throughout the year after that. So next up I've got Hesperis, and this comes in nice white and purple colours and some very light pale pink, almost white as well. And it is a fantastic flower to follow on from the Honesty. So the Honesty will flower for me first, March, April time. It'll go with those narcissi and tulips, and then after it's finished flowering, the Hesperis will then come out. So if you sow both of them, then you should just get a continuation on of these nice filler flowers. And Hesperis smells absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favourite scents. Before the sweet peas come out, the Hesperis is just lovely. It's easy to grow from seed, and you can get it out there in your garden. It'll flower for you next year, and actually it's quite good at self-seeding. You'll find little seedlings popping up after that, and you can just transplant them into an area where you want Hesperis to be in the years to come. So you might only need to sow these seeds once, and then you'll just keep getting little Hesperis seedlings. We have got Wallflowers. Now Wallflowers for me actually are an interesting one. If I sow this now, it will flower next year, and it provides lovely foliage as well that you can use in jam jar arrangements or in bouquets if you can get long enough stems. But I actually find that the year after that it tends to do even better for me, so I will keep it in the ground. I won't remove it. Some people might think that Wallflowers as a cut flower are just good for one season, but actually this can come back again and do really well with better stems the year after that. So another great biennial to grow is Sweet William. Dianthus barbatus, and it's a fantastic one because it's very tolerant of our cooler temperatures here in Scotland. It'll grow away for you nicely, and again, like the Wallflowers, quite often in a second year I'll get even more flowers, so it's worth just keeping it going for a couple of seasons and then replacing it with new stock. And it comes in lots of different varieties. So that's one of the benefits from growing from seed, is that when you get it in the garden centres and pick it up as plug plants, there's normally just a small variety that you can choose from. If you grow from seed, then there's so many different colours that you can enjoy. And if you want specific ones, maybe if you're growing some wedding flowers and you just want whites, you can sow white ones. You can get these gorgeous sooty varieties, which is like almost black burgundy kind of colour. It's really quite unusual, and you wouldn't find that necessarily in a garden centre in a plug plant. So really worth growing from seed as well. So we've got those. And then finally, another biennial that I'm going to grow today is Foxgloves. Foxgloves are fantastic because they are real statement flowers. So later on this season you get your really nice tall spikes from larkspur and snapdragons, but earlier on the season it's difficult to find those vertical spikes, and especially if you're doing event flowers and you're maybe providing flowers for florists that are creating these lovely big arrangements at weddings, they are looking for nice big tall stems. So along with the lupins, the foxgloves are great at this time of year. Mine are just starting to come along now. I think end of June they'll be flowering as well. I'll show you them in the garden and the stage they're at after we've done the seed sowing, and you can see what they look like. But again, lots of lovely varieties of foxglove that you can grow. And growing them from seed means that you can choose the varieties and the colours that you want to grow in your garden or flower farm. So let's get started with some seed sowing. Really, really simple, not much to it at all. So I'm starting off with Honesty. Honesty are really large seeds, really easy to sow and handle and spread out either in the garden or in your seed tray. I have got my label here, my packet of seeds, so let's open it up and get sowing. So there they are, lovely big seeds that you can see there. So we'll just start spreading them out on our damp compost. Now these seeds here, they just need a light covering with either some vermiculite or some more seed compost. I don't know how you're finding your compost this year. I'm trying to go peat free and been struggling a wee bit to find any that aren't really drying at the moment. They seem to dry out really quickly and not absorb the moisture so well. So really trying to be careful to make sure that I stay on top of the watering and that they don't dry out. But I might just put some vermiculite on the top because I think it'll be slightly less heavy and maybe not have so many of these big bits that I'm finding in the compost. Have you found any good peat-free compost that you're really happy with, that are taking up moisture well, not drying out too much? Some of mine I've found have kind of formed a crust even around about the plants. It's just not as ideal. And even thinking about just using my own homemade compost for seed sowing and potting on maybe next year until I can find a variety that I'm happy with. There we go, that's the Honesty seeds all laid out, and you can see because they're quite large they're easy to space out. So we'll just cover them with some vermiculite. Because I've already watered these, they're not going to need any extra water at the moment, even with putting the vermiculite on the top, because the compost is nice and damp underneath. And these will germinate away very quickly. So we'll check back on them and I'll show you how they're doing in a week or two's time. You can start biennial seeds off any time in June, July, as long as they've got enough time to establish in the garden before those frosts come along. And I'm really starting them off this early in June, one because we're in Scotland and things always take longer than you would think to establish themselves, but also because I'm going away on a family holiday and I want them germinated and ready as little seedlings before I go, so that when mum and dad come along and they're looking after them, then they've got proper big seedlings to look after rather than having seed trays and some germinated and some not. So here's the Sweet William seeds. They're smaller than the Honesty, so a little bit more tricky to space out, but still large enough that you should be able to do it fairly easily. So let's just put them here on our seed tray. I'm just going to sprinkle them. It'll be a bit difficult for you to see against the compost there, but I've just evenly tried to space them out across the seed tray. And again, I'll cover those with vermiculite. So nice and easy, and then they will pop up pretty quickly for me, I would think. And again, in a couple of weeks' time, I will check back with you and show you how they're getting on. So next up, we've got some foxglove seeds. They like some light to germinate, so they are just surface sown and pressed onto the surface of your damp compost. There's no need to cover the foxglove seeds, so let's go and do that just now. Foxgloves are much tinier seeds than the other two I've shown you so far, so just sprinkle out the best you can, either direct sown outside on the surface of the soil or inside in your seed trays. Just space them out as best you can, but you'll be able to pop them on into their own individual pots once they've germinated and come up as little seedlings. These are Wallflower seeds, quite similar in size to the Sweet William ones. It's fairly easy to space out in your seed tray, so we'll do that just now. So I'm looking forward to seeing lots of these lovely flowers next May, and there's something nice to know that you're doing something about next year's flowers just now, even though you're in the middle of this season. It's nice to know that you're starting to cover next year as well, and to kind of prevent this May gap from happening where you're finishing all those nice spring flowers and then you're worried you're not going to have anything in bloom because those annuals haven't come out. So this is definitely helping with that. Wallflowers can be covered with a bit of vermiculite too. And then I'll label it up. If you're keeping them in the greenhouse, you can put a humidity dome over the top of them just to keep a nice environment for them to germinate, but remember to lift it off as soon as you see any sign of germination. Just press them down so there's contact with that nice damp compost underneath. So Hesperis seeds again are very similar in size to those Sweet William ones and the Wallflower ones, and you can space them out fairly evenly on your seed tray. And again, they're similar to those ones in that you can just cover them with a few millimeters of your vermiculite or your seed compost. Cover them over, press down so there's some nice contact with the damp compost underneath, and they should germinate away for you. They're all kind of germinating around 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, so it doesn't need to be high temperatures for germination, which is why you don't need any heat mats or anything like that. Heated propagating benches at this time of year. They'll just germinate fine for you in your greenhouse, or probably even outside direct in your garden. They'll be absolutely fine germinating at this time of year. Right, just need to label this Hesperis up and then that's ready as well. So a question that you might have about seed sowing with these biennials is, can I direct sow them outside? Because we've just sown some just now over here and they have been sown into seed trays. But you could avoid that faff and just put them straight into the garden this time of year. Why am I not doing that? Well, there's a few different reasons for that. One, it's space. So at this time of year, the beds are really jam-packed full. They have got all the plants out there, the annuals, they've got the dahlias and things all in the beds. There's not much room. And I've still got ranunculus and things going in beds. They're not quite finished yet. So I need space to free up. So by direct sowing them in here, potting them up, then that gives me a little bit of time for some of those first hardy annuals to finish flowering, the ranunculus to finish flowering, and then that'll free up bed space for me. The other reason that I like to sow them indoors is, again, the slug problems. If I establish them indoors, then I know that there are stronger, bigger plants for going outside. And again, also, it just means that I can choose where I put them and how I space them, and I don't have to thin things out outside. It's also quite easy for me just to pop in water in the evenings. I can just keep an eye on the seedlings, make sure they're growing nice and strong. One thing to say though is that although I'm sowing some in the greenhouse just now, if it's a really hot day, I'm just going to put those seed trays outside. I don't want them to bake in the greenhouse in here. That'll be too much for those little seedlings. So on overcast days today, it's relatively warm, but it's not too hot. There's no direct sun coming in this greenhouse. I'll just keep the seedlings in the seed trays just now. Really hot days with lots of sunshine, the seed trays will be perfectly fine outside. And if I'm routinely putting the seed trays outside because of the heat, it's actually just acclimatizing them to the outdoors as well. So you're kind of starting that hardening off process early, and then they'll be ready to plant out into the garden. But yes, you can direct sow. So I'm choosing not to direct sow, but that's just a space issue for me. It's certainly something that you can do. If you've got the space, then go for it. It saves that potting on, and you can just get them straight outside and they will germinate and do absolutely fine for you. So you can do either or, just whatever suits you. So I'm just going to take you in the garden and show you just now what the biennials are looking like at the beginning of June. So we've got some that are in flower. The Hesperis are flowering away. They're in full flow at the moment. Foxgloves aren't far off. I'll show you the stage they're at. The Honesty is pretty much finished. I might be able to show you the tail end of that. And the Sweet William, it's not far away as well. We'll show you the stage of that. Lots of lovely foliage on it, but not quite in flower yet. I think that'll be towards the end of June. This year I haven't actually got any wallflowers on the go. I've had a gap of a year or two without having them, so I'm wanting to start them again now that I've got a bit more space and organisation out in the beds, and there's a bit more room for them going in next year. So here's the Hesperis in the garden, and it's looking gorgeous. It's been flowering away for the last 2 weeks now, and I think it'll keep going for another couple of weeks yet. We've got some that's fully out, but there are lots more new buds I can see on new stems to come. And Hesperis as well, if you cut this back after flowering just now, then you should get a second flush in August-September time. It'll be shorter stems, but still very usable for flower arranging. Hopefully here you can see some of the different colours of Hesperis you can get. So that's a paley pink one there, and you've got the more deeper purples and the whites. So the Foxgloves have put on a lot of growth in the last couple of weeks, and you can see all the buds forming there, and we're going to get some super flowers, probably not until towards the end of June though, once they've coloured up and come into flower. These are really tall spikes that we've got coming on, so they're going to be fantastic for any event flowers that florists want to do. So the Sweet William is putting on some good growth that I sowed last year. We haven't quite got any flowers yet though, it'll be a few weeks before we get them. You can see here that we've got some flower buds coming though, and they'll not take too long to come into flower. I think towards the end of June we'll be seeing the Sweet William this year. Everything's just a little bit behind because of some of the colder spells in the winter we had. So the Honesty has finished flowering, so I can't show you those in the garden today, but I can show you the seed pods that are starting to form on the plants. And these can stay on the plants outside in the garden over the summer, but do be sure to harvest them before the summer weather turns bad so that you get the seed pods in good condition, and then you can keep them dry indoors for use in arrangements. So the other sowing that I'm doing at the moment is that I'm doing my annuals and my sunflowers. Again, the fast ones that are going to flower for me within a good short period of time from sowing to getting them to flower. So phacelia, that is going to just get sown direct outside in the garden at this time of year. There's no point in potting it on inside. It'll get leggy, it'll stretch, it'll just cause me problems, I think. It's much easier to direct sow that one. It comes up really quickly, really easily, and I'll try and space it out so I don't have to thin it too much at a later stage. Sunflowers, on the other hand, precious seeds for me, quite expensive to buy in. Birds love them if they get to them, and slugs as well with the tiny little new seedlings, they like to munch away too. So those ones I'm going to start inside, but I'll pretty rapidly get them out. Once they've got little seedlings on them, they'll be outside hardening off in the daytime and then straight into the flower beds. So much faster turnaround on keeping them indoors in the greenhouse compared to when you start off all those annuals back in the early springtime. They'll be weeks in the greenhouse and then a few weeks hardening off. These ones will germinate within a week, they'll be up and going within another week, and then I'll probably be hardening them off the week after that. So really quick turnaround, getting them out into the garden within a month. And then they will flower for me probably, they usually say about 60 days for pro-cut sunflowers from sowing the seeds to getting the flowers. I always add on a little bit here in Scotland. Things are slower than that, so I would say probably at least 70 days for me. So we're looking at the end of August into September really for these flowers now. But that just shows you why succession sowing is important, because I still want to have sunflowers even after that. I want them at the end of September. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have to put even more batches of sunflowers on. So it's just keeping steadily going and remembering to do it in amongst all other busy jobs in the garden. So I'm going to sow some more sunflower seeds just now. These are pro-cut white night ones. They're lovely flowers to grow. Sunflowers are so easy to sow because they're such big seeds. Can't really go wrong. You can put them into 2-3 inch pots, you can put them into seed trays, you can sow them direct outside. Really easy to space out, and they'll germinate really quickly and get going. They do grow at quite a speed, so you need to pot them on pretty quick if you're going to do that, to stop them getting too leggy and give them enough room to grow their roots down. And like I said before, I'm going to be going and planting these out really quickly, fast turnaround. They're going to germinate pretty quick, pot them up very quickly so they don't get too leggy, get them outside in the sun to grow on a bit, just bring them in the greenhouse at night time, and then within a month I'll have them planted out in the garden. Just going to cover with some vermiculite. You can cover with seed compost if you like, and get it all firmed down so that the sunflower seeds are in contact with some nice moist compost. And we'll leave them to germinate in the greenhouse. So next I'm going to sow some phacelia outdoors. I've got an area of bed that I'm not using at the moment, so I am just clearing it of any larger stones, making sure it's weed free before I make a drill to sow my seeds into. If you want to make sure you're working in straight lines, you can use twine and some canes to make sure your row's straight. And then I've soaked the drill so that the seeds will come into contact with some moisture. I will water again later when I'm doing the whole flower patch, and I come out in the evening to do that. But this just gives them some nice moisture to get started, and I know that they're in contact with it. And they'll germinate really quickly, just covering them over with a light covering of soil. And once I have little seedlings, I'll thin them to about 30 centimetres apart. So the phacelia that I sowed today will flower for me in about 6 to 8 weeks' time, which is great because, as you can see, I've got phacelia that's just starting to flower just now in the garden, and it'll keep flowering for me for a number of weeks. But to keep it going all season long, you do need those further successions. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope that you've got some ideas about some seeds that you can sow now it is June. They might not give you flowers this year, but they will give you a head start on really nice flowers in your garden or flower farm next year. And they help to fill that gap between the narcissi and the tulips and the annuals really getting going. So it's really worthwhile sowing some biennial seeds if you can just now. Next week we'll be back in the garden. I'm going to be showing you around how everything has progressed in the last few weeks. I've been doing an awful lot of planting out. The greenhouse is starting to look a lot emptier now. Lots and lots of plants are outside in the garden, and I'm having to get them staked and supported with their netting. And we are starting to get some flowers just now, so it'll be great to take you around and just show you the progress and where we're up to next week.